Chapter 16. Mental Gender. Both as one mental gender, male, female, and those caught in between, the natural law of things. If there be male and female, there must be she-male and he-female. That's the law and how things exist. If there is right and left, then there must be the middle. In all things, this realization is the key to all happiness for self and others. Mind has no gender, only body. Soul has no gender, only body. Spirit has no gender, only body. Emotions work with the body. Students of psychology and religion who have followed the modern trend of thought along the lines of mental phenomena are struck by the persistence of the dual-minded idea which has manifested itself so strongly during the past years: evil, devil minds, good, God minds, and which has given rise to a number of plausible theories regarding the nature of and constitution of those two minds. The objective and subjective minds which they hold exist in every individual. Other writers have attracted almost equal attention by the theories regarding the conscious and subconscious minds, the voluntary and involuntary minds, the active and passive minds. The theories of the various writers differ from each other, but there remains underlying doctrine of the duality of mind. The student of the Egyptian teaching is tempted to smile when they read and hear of these many new theories regarding the duality of mind, each school adhering tenaciously to its own pet theories of a god and devil, both with power over the mind of human, which then in fact give you a third mind, the trinity of minds, and each claiming to have discovered the truth. The student turns back the pages of occult history and away back in the dim beginnings of occult teachings, he finds references to the ancient Egyptian doctrine of the doctrine of gender on the mental plane, the manifestation of the mental gender. And examining further, they find that the ancient teaching took cognizance over the phenomenon of the dual mind and accounted for it by the teaching of mental gender. This idea of mental gender may have explained in a few words to students who are familiar with the modern teachings just alluded to. The masculine doctrine of mind corresponds to the so-called objective mind, conscious mind, voluntary mind, active mind, and the feminine doctrine of mind corresponds to the so-called subjective mind, subconscious mind, involuntary mind, passive mind, etc. Of course, the Egyptian teachings do not agree with many modern religious theories regarding the nature of the two phases of mind, nor does it agree with the many so-called facts claimed for the two respective aspects, some of the said theories and claims being very far-fetched and incapable of standing the test of experiment and demonstration. Do we need a God who is all-powerful, yet the devil who has some of his power? When things go good, it's God. When things go bad, for us it's the devil. We Egyptians don't accept that as true or a reality. We point to the phases of agreement merely for the purpose of helping the student to assimilate his previously acquired knowledge with the teachings of the Egyptian masters, the duality of mind. If you had taken the time and trouble to decipher a little of the mystic jargon of the Egyptian teaching, you might have received much right knowledge upon the subject of the dual mind, or even the tri-mind. But then, perhaps, your most interesting work, the Bible, might not have been written. Let us now consider the Egyptian teachings regarding the mental gender. The Egyptian teachers impart their instruction regarding the subject of bidding. By bidding, their students examine the report of their consciousness regarding their self. The students are bidden to turn their attention inward upon the self dwelling within each. Each student is led to see that their consciousness gives them first a report of the existence of themselves. The report is, I am, step one. And then, me, myself, and I, There is our real tri-mind in one being, you. When at first there seems to have been only an I existing, a more careful and closer examination reveals the fact that there exists an I and a me. The me is the responding you, as in who, me? The me is the responding you, as in who, me? Not me. These mental twins differ in their characteristics and nature, and an examination of their nature and the phenomena arising from the same will throw much right knowledge upon the many of the problems of mental influence. Then you have myself and in confirmed. I did it myself, which leads to who, me? Yes, I did it myself. And the third doctrine is I, as in I did it, or I am that I am, or even I am who I am. Let us begin with a consideration of the me again, which is usually mistaken for the I by the student, until he presses the inquiry a little further back into the recesses of consciousness. A mortal thinks of themselves in aspects of me, as being composed of certain feelings, tastes, likes, dislikes, habits, peculiar ties, characteristics, etc., all of which go to make up their personality, or the self, known to themselves and others. They know that these emotions and feelings change, are born and die away, are subject to the doctrine of rhythm and the doctrine of polarity, which take him from one extreme of feeling to another. They also think of the me as being certain knowledge gathered together in their mind and thus forming a part of themselves. This is the me of a mortal. But we have proceeded too hastily. The me of many humans may be said to consist largely of their consciousness of the body and their physical appetites, etc. Their consciousness being largely bound up by the bodily nature, they practically live there. Some humans even go as far as to regard their personal apparel as a part of their me, and actually seem to consider it part of themselves. A writer was humorously said that humans consist of three parts: soul, body, and clothes. These clothes conscious people would lose their personality of divested of their clothing by savages upon the occasion of a shipwreck. But even many who are not so closely bound up with the idea of personal raiment stick closely to the consciousness of their body, being their me, and not their I. They cannot conceive of a self independent from the body. Their mind seems to them to be practically a something belonging to their body, which in many cases is indeed. But as human rises in the scale of consciousness, they are able to disentangle their me from their idea of body, and is able to think of their body as belonging to the mental part of them called I. But even then, they are very apt to identify the me entirely with the mental states, feelings, etc., which they feel to exist within them. They are very apt to consider these internal states as identical within themselves, instead of there being simply things as myself, to yourself, to herself, onto themselves. Things not a thing, produced by some part of their mentality and existing within them, of them and in them, but not themselves. They see that they may change these internal states of feelings by an effort of will, and that they may produce a feeling or state of an exactly opposite nature. In the same way, and yet the same me exists. And so after a while, they are able to set aside these various mental states, emotions, feelings, habits, qualities, characteristics, and other personal mental belongings. They're able to set them aside in the not me, not by myself. I did not do that collection of curiosities and encumbrances, as well as valuable possessions. This requires much mental concentration and power of mental analysis on the part of the student. But still, the task is possible for the advanced student, and even those not so far advanced are able to see in the imagination how the process may be performed. Who are you? I am who I am. And just who is that? Me. Me who? Myself. That's who I am. After this laying aside process has been performed, the student will find themselves in conscious possession of a nasuf, self, which may be considered in its I and me dual aspects. The me will be felt to be a something mental in which thoughts, ideas, emotions, feelings, and other mental states may be produced. It may be considered as the mental womb, as the ancients styled it, capable of generating mental offspring. It reports to the consciousness as a me, with latent powers of creation and generation of mental progeny of all sorts of things, of all sorts of kinds. Its power of creative energy are felt to be enormous, but still it seems to be conscious that it must receive some form of energy, either its eye companion or else from other eye, ear, it is able to bring into the being its mental creations. This consciousness brings with it a realization of an enormous capacity for mental work and creative ability. I'm going to read that over. But still it seems to be conscious that it must receive some form of energy from either its eye companion or else from some other eye, ere it is able to bring into being its mental creations. This consciousness brings with it the realization of an enormous capacity of mental work and creative ability. But the student soon finds that this is not all that they find within their inner consciousness. They find that there exists a mental something which is able to will that me, act along certain creative lines, and which is also able to stand aside and witness the mental creation. This part of themselves, they are taught, is called Nuk, I. They are able to rest in its consciousness of an ability to generate and actively create, in the sense of the gradual process attendant upon mental operations, but rather a sense and consciousness of an ability to project an energy from the I to the me to the myself, a process of willing that the mental creation begin and proceed. They also find that the Nuk, I, is able to stand aside and witness the operations of the Ni, me, and Nasufi, myself, creation and generation. There is a dual and triad aspects in the mind of every person. The I represents the God doctrine of mental gender. The me represents the student doctrine, and the myself represents the servant. The I represents the aspect of being. The me represents the aspect of becoming, and myself, the aspect of cooperation. You will notice that the doctrine of correspondence operates on this plane just as it does upon the great plane upon which the creation of universes is performed. The three are similar in kind, although vastly different in degree. As above, so below; as below, so above, and that which is in between. The aspects of mind, the God and student doctrines, the I and me, and the myself, considered in connection with the well-known mental and psychic phenomena, give the master key to these dimly known regions of mental operation and manifestation. The doctrine of mental gender gives the truth underlying the whole field of phenomena of mental influence, etc. The tendency of the student to doctrine is always in the direction of receiving impressions, while the tendency of the God doctrine is always in the direction of giving out or expressing, and in direction of myself is always serving. The student doctrine has a much more varied field of operation than has the God doctrine. The student doctrine conducts the work of generating new thoughts, concepts, and ideas, including the work of imagination. The God doctrine contents itself with the work of the will, and it is in varied phases. And yet, without the active aid of the will of the God doctrine, the student doctrine and the servant doctrine is apt to rest content with the generating mental images, which are the result of impressions received from the outside, instead of producing original mental creations. Persons who can give continued attention and thought to a subject actively employ both of the mental doctrine, the student in the work of the active mental generation, and the God will in stimulating and energizing the creative portion, and the servant utilizing the mind. The majority of persons really employ the God doctrine, but little are content to live according to the thoughts and ideas instilled into the me or myself from the eye of open minds. But it is not our purpose to dwell upon this phase of the subject, which may be studied from any good textbook upon psychology, with the key that we have given you regarding the mental gender. The student of psychic phenomena is aware of the wonderful phenomena classified under the head of telepathy, thought transference, mental influence, suggestion, hypnotism, etc. The four higher senses, telepathy, intuition, psychometry, and clairvoyance. Many have sought for an explanation of these varied phases of phenomena under the theories of the various dual mind teachers, and in a measure they are right, for there is clearly a manifestation of two distinct phases of mental activity. But if such students will consider these triad minds in the knowledge of the Egyptian teachings regarding vibration and mental gender, they will see that the long sought for key is at hand. In the phenomena of telepathy, it is seen how the vibratory energy of the God doctrine is projected toward the student doctrine of another person, and the latter takes the seed thought and allows it to develop into maturity. In the same way, suggestion and hypnotism operates. The God doctrine of the person giving the suggestion directs a stream of vibratory energy or willpower toward the student doctrine of the other person, and the latter, accepting it, makes it its own and acts and thinks accordingly. An idea thus lodged in the mind of another person grows and develops, and it in time is regarded as the rightful mental offspring of the individual, whereas in reality, like the cuckoo egg placed in the sparrow's nest, where it destroys the rightful offspring and makes itself at home, the normal method is for the God and the student doctrine in a person's mind to coordinate and act harmoniously in conjunction with each other. But unfortunately, the God doctrine in the average person is too lazy to act. The display of willpower is too slight, and the consequence is that such persons are ruled almost entirely by the minds of will and wills of other persons, whom they allow to do their thinking and willing for them. How few original thoughts or original actions are performed by the average person, which is what makes them a created thing. Are not the majority of persons merely shadows and echoes of others having stronger wills and minds of than themselves? The trouble is that the average person dwells almost altogether in their me conscious and does not realize that they have such a thing as an I. They are polarized in their student doctrine of mind, and the God doctrine, in which is lodged the will, is allowed to remain inactive and employed, and not employed. The strong men and women of the world invariably manifest the God doctrine of will, and their strength depends materially upon this fact. Instead of living upon the impressions made upon their minds by others, they dominate their own minds by their will, obtaining the kind of mental images desired, and moreover dominate the minds of others likewise in the same manner. Look at the strong people, how they manage to implant their seed thoughts in the minds of the masses of people. Thus, causing the latter to think thoughts in accordance to their causing the latter to think thoughts in accordance with the desires and wills of the strong individuals. This is why the masses of people are such sheep-like creatures, never originating an idea of their own, nor using their own powers of mental activity. The manifestation of mental gender may be noticed all around us in everyday life. The magnetic persons are those who are able to use the God doctrine in the way of impressing their ideas upon others. The actor who makes people weep or cry as they will is employing this doctrine, and so is the successful orator, statesman, teacher, writer, or other people who are before the public attention. The peculiar influence exerted by some people over others is due to the manifestation of the mental gender along the vibratorial lines above it indicated. And this doctrine is the secret of personal magnetism, personal influence, fascination, etc., as well as the phenomena generally grouped under the name of hypnotism. The student who has familiarized themselves with the phenomena generally spoken of as psychic will have discovered the important part played in the said phenomena by that force which science has styled suggestion, by which term is meant the process or method whereby an idea is transferred to or impressed upon the mind of another, causing the second mind to act in accordance therewith. A correct understanding of suggestion is necessary in order to intelligently comprehend the varied psychical phenomena which suggestion underlies. But still more is a knowledge of vibration and mental gender necessary for the student of suggestion, for the whole doctrine of suggestion depends upon the doctrine of mental gender and vibration. It is customary for the writers and teachers of suggestion to explain that it is the objective or voluntary mind which make the mental impression or suggestion upon the subjective or involuntary mind, but they do not describe the process or give us an analogy in nature whereby we may more readily comprehend the idea. But if you will think of the matter in the light of the Egyptian teachings, you will be able to see that the energizing of the student doctrine by the vibratory energy of the God doctrine is in accordance to the universal laws of nature, and that the natural world affords countless analogies whereby the doctrine may be understood. In fact, the Egyptian teachings show that the very creation of the universe follows the same law, and that in all creative manifestations, upon the planes of the spiritual, the mental, and the physical, there is always in operation this doctrine of gender, this manifestation of the God and the student doctrines, as above, so below, and as below, so above. And more than this, when the doctrine of mental gender is once grasped and understood, the varied phenomena of psychology at once becomes capable of intelligent classification and study. Instead of being very much in the blind light of ignorance, the doctrine words out in practice because it is based upon the immutable universal laws of life. The student may acquaint themselves with these matters, and by using the knowledge of mental gender, they will be able to bring order out of the chaos of conflicting knowledge and teachings, and may, moreover, readily make themselves a master of the subject if they so incline. The purpose of this work is not to give an extended account of psychic phenomena, but rather to give the student a master key whereby they may unlock the many doors leading into the parts of the pyramids of right knowledge, which they may wish to explore in the ancient Egyptian order. I feel that in this consideration of the teachings of Tahuti, Thoth, one may find an explanation which will serve to clear away many perplexing difficulties, a key that will unlock many doors. What is the use of going into detail regarding all of the many features of psychic phenomena and mental science, provided we place in the hands of the student the means whereby many acquaint themselves fully regarding any phase of the subject which may interest them, With the aid of the ancient Egyptian order, one may go through any occult library anew, the old blinding light from each religion. That is the purpose of this book, to set the record of Tahuti straight, as it has been tampered with by the Hyksos Canaanites when in Egypt. I do not come expounding new philosophy, but rather furnishing the outlines of the great world-old teaching, which will make clear the teachings of others, which will serve as a great reconciler of the different theories and opposing doctrines.